Hello, this is Frédéric Gaussin. I'm very sorry I can't be here with you this morning for family and personal reasons. I do apologize for that. I was very grateful to Dr. Leo and Dr. Coleman, to Mika and Jeremy for inviting me. Thank you again. I made this small video. I hope it's going to work. Well, I call this presentation Body Language, Body Science, Analyzing the Great Pianists in Action. And I'd like to talk about some black and white, silent, and above all, slow motion movies that were shot in Paris almost a century ago. Here is the story. Right after the Great War, after the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a young lady emigrated from Eastern Europe and settled in France. Her name was Louta Nouneberg, N-U-N-B-E-R-G, Nouneberg, but she'd quickly changed that German spelling to replace it with a more convenient, if not more accepted, Gallic form of it. Anyway, Louta Nouneberg, with 3 added letters, was not Austrian, nor German, nor Russian, although she was fluent in those languages too. She was born in 1893 in a southern Polish town, then part of the German Reich. Laia Nouneberg, that's the original name, was the daughter of Liza Nouneberg and Gitla Kalman. They belonged to the Jewish community of Benzin, which is no more. Benzin, I hope I say it right, is located a few kilometers away from Krakow, close to the former border with Czechoslovakia. The land was said to be the land of the 3 emperors. That was a crossroad of idioms and cultures. Louta Nouneberg was a pianist, a humble and honest pianist. I mean, she was far from being an amateur, yet she was not a famed virtuoso, although she had studied in Vienna with Leschetizky. Theodor Leschetizky, one of the most successful piano pedagogues of the modern era. A great many of his students became internationally acclaimed artists and still are today. Louta Nouneberg moved to Paris with the widow of her late professor in order to teach according to the maestro's principles. She established as a private teacher. This is important. She held no academic, no official position. She would also give recitals twice a year in small venues. Paris music critics agreed that she was, I quote, cultured, gifted. Still, Louta Nouneberg played and taught the piano without being fully satisfied of herself. She was in fact soon to become obsessed with the mastering of the most effective hand, wrist, and arm gestures, from the fingertips to the shoulders. This is body knowledge, praxis, and performance indeed. As a pianist, Nouneberg realized she was not able to play the great repertoire in the way she dreamed of. She was not physically able to fully deliver the composer's message the way she wanted to. And as a teacher, she was even more in search of answers for her pupils. Thus, Louta Nouneberg kept working on perfecting her keyboard technique, motor coordination, and tone production by reading methods, observing virtuosos on stage, by attending masterclasses, and, above all, by questioning her personal conceptions and daily practice. The development of her own approach took a definite step forward in 1924 after she discovered the slow motion effect in an avant-garde theater. She wrote that she watched a horse running in slow motion, and that was a shock. She literally had no idea of the way a horse coordinated its movements and used its muscles. We don't know for sure, but she may have watched this. Horse in Motion, that's the title, was created by Edward Muybridge as early as 1878. But look, this is not a movie, this is an incredible and passionate gathering of hundreds of photographs. As funny as it sounds, this animation triggered something. Nouneberg figured at once that a real slow-motion movie could help her understand the motions and attitudes and gestures of a professional pianist. Nouneberg obviously was a very clever person with a strong will and all sorts of skills. It took her 3 years, but in the end, she managed to record several great pianists perform a selection of Etudes by Chopin, which are the epitome of technical demands, which are revolutionary, beautiful pieces of music, not exercises, that Chopin wrote on purpose for us mortals to suffer, to curse and despair. Between January 1927 and probably April 28, Nouneberg directed 14 movies. 28 minutes, which is enormous, of black and white, silent films, shot in slow motion and also at real speed. Nouneberg's cast included such luminaries as Arthur Rubinstein, Wilhelm Backhaus, Alfred Cortot, Nikolai Orlov, Vladimir Horowitz, who is regarded today as a legend of the piano, but he was only 23 at the time. So Nouneberg's cast was an international, very impressive one. There were also 3 women in it, like Wanda Landowska, Winifred Christie, Marguerite Long. There was also a movie of Igor Stravinsky, which is lost. Only half of the Nouneberg movies still exist today. We ignore how they survived the Holocaust. They now belong to the French National Center for Visual and Sound Archives. So, here are the main facts. And now the movies. Before we watch some excerpts, I'll remind you that the standard speed in movie making in the 20s was 16 FPS, 16 frames per second. Now it is 24. This is why movies from the past, as you know, seem faster and mechanical, if not ridiculous at times, when played at today's standard. Well, why are those movies so remarkable? First of all, from a sheer director's point of view, this is no small feat. To achieve a slow motion effect, you must capture a scene at a much higher rate than usual. You must divide it into slices. That is, you have to divide time into many, many images. And back then, there was a nice trick to do so. It is called overcranking. Remember? Motor, roll, action. Overcranking was a homemade hack. That was not a real technique. Yet in 1927, in Paris, there was one kind of camera, only one, that would allow you to make a proper slow-motion movie. That was called the Debris GV. That was a very high-speed, very expensive machine that was built by the military for ballistics studies. And instead of 16 frames per second, the Debris camera could capture 8 times more images. And Louta Nouneberg used one. So it means that she hired a crew, a cameraman, a director of photography, and operators. Her movies required a studio, a set, spotlights, mirrors, some special electric wires, a lab to process the roll, etc., plus a beautiful grand piano. There's no need to explain what happened behind the scenes, but Nouneberg had to raise money. She had to hire experienced people. She had to organize it all without any iPhone. And not to talk about those busy titans of the keyboard and their agents whom she had to convince in the first place. Then her work is also remarkable, I think, because it is unprecedented. I mean, putting a camera on stage a century ago, very close to the musicians, there was no way of zooming, to focus only on fingers, hands and arms, with such a modern angle. In the early days of silent movies, this was such a daring experiment. This was not done before. The Nouneberg movies form a priceless historical testimony. In some cases even, they are not only the best, but also the only visual memory we keep of these golden age performers. That's a bygone era. Enfin, last but not least, the most important and striking aspect to me is that Louta Nouneberg had both a vision and a goal. In producing such films, she of course did not intend to produce a documentary, nor a commercial ad, nor a YouTube short, nor a loosey homemade video. See what I mean? No, she wanted to understand, she wanted to improve, she wanted to apply to herself and transmit to her students the fundamental principles in piano playing. Tomes of books and treatises had been written on that matter, all adorned with expert drawings or frightening boards. Right, but to decipher a great performance body movements and body language, Nouneberg found a new path. She did not use the good old torture devices. Louta Nouneberg invented a new method. The purpose of what we call today biomechanics is the study of the structure, function, motion of the mechanical aspects of an organism. And Nouneberg, in that respect, undoubtedly acted as a pioneer body scientist. She relied on a state-of-the-art technology in order to observe more accurately with a movie camera, not her eyes, what's at stake in piano playing. She chose different artists representing different teachings, different techniques, different styles and schools of playing in order to make comparisons. She was blessed with a scientific mind. In fact, it's high time to tell you that she was the sister of Professor Hermann Nouneberg, who was a prominent neurologist, an early member of the Psychoanalytic Society, the assistant of Carl Jung in Zurich, and a psychiatrist who was closely associated with Sigmund Freud. This is why Nouneberg studied in Vienna. She was used, in a way, to ask questions, to think, to analyze, and make deductions like in clinical medicine. And what did she try to understand and explain? Well, another student of Leschetizky, Arthur Schnabel, used to say that playing the piano simply consists in playing the right notes at the right time with the right fingers, which is a good start. Yet a few questions arise from this Wiener Witz. A modern piano keyboard, for instance, has 88 keys. Right, but we only have 10 fingers. So which fingers shall we use? How do we decide? What about the general posture? How should we sit? What about the position of the hand? Do you grasp the key as if you had a claw? Shall we play with more round, curved fingers, almost on the nails, or should we play with a rather flat hand on the more fleshy part of the fingers? Then what should we do with the wrist and the upper arm? Should the elbows remain firmly attached to the body? Should we prefer a more supple approach? Then, what does it mean to play a note? You all know what a piano is, but a piano maker could testify that a key, black or white, in itself does not produce any sound, B flat, G sharp, whatever. A key for a piano maker is just a dead piece of wood. Yes, but an engineer would say that this very piece of wood is actually a lever that is connected to a whole complex mechanism. If you action that lever, you strike a metal string with a felt hammer. But how? Should we strike a key by lifting up the fingers in a very articulated way, or is it more efficient to press the key and remain close to the surface of the keyboard? These are two different schools of teaching, two different conceptions. This is Alfred Cortot, and that picture was shot in 1927, probably on the set of the movies. He is seated quite low, he's relaxed, very natural. His hands are firm. Look at his fingers, very strong, yet his arms are loose, and his elbows are very free also. Even without actually listening to him, you can feel he's gonna exert some kind of pressure on the keys. You can feel he's gonna press the keys instead of hitting them. Meanwhile, this is Marguerite Long. She was the same age, she was French too, she's also in the movies. And look, this is another world. No, nobody is doing harm to that poor Miss Long, but according to her, that's what she wrote in her method. Fingers must be hammers, and you should remain in a position where your elbows are along the body. So in the end, it is not surprising that Louta Nouneberg, as a piano teacher, as a concert pianist, felt deeply concerned with all those matters. How to use your fingers, how to move your wrist, how to use your arms, your upper arms, your shoulders. Should we play the piano with the back, with the weight of the arms, etc.? Of course she was interested in all those questions, but I think the most important is the way she strived to constitute and validate her knowledge through theory, practice, and experimentations. Between 1927 and 1933, Louta Nouneberg published 2 piano methods in French. She made deductions from her movies, she analyzed all those images, she used still pictures taken from her movies in the methods, she explained what she discovered, she invented also a very technical but a whole set of marks in order to transcribe on the music the pianist's body movements with a lot of slurs, and in the end she gained international fame for this work. She gave conferences in Berlin, in Venice, in Switzerland, in England also, and in 1935 she was appointed lecturer in piano studies at the Mozarteum in Salzburg. She used her movies as a teaching support in order to demonstrate what she had discovered about piano technique, piano movements, body movements. Well, once again, I'm very sorry I can't be here to answer your questions. I hope this was not too tedious. I'd just like to add that some of the Nouneberg movies are available for free on YouTube. Thanks a lot for your attention, and have a good day. Thank you.